Hey, before we jump in, if you like what you hear on the podcast, check out our free Substack newsletter, The Sober Friends Dispatch. It's a weekly dose of real talk, stories from the sober life, and a little extra support between episodes. Go to soberfriendspod.substack.com and subscribe. That's soberfriendspod.substack.com. All right, let's get into the show. You mentioned weddings. Weddings are another place where it is expected to drink. This is the normalization of alcohol in a social setting, and specifically certain social settings. And I think a place like hibachi where you're celebrating and they're doing their thing, that alcohol is something that is expected. Public experiences, drinking games, celebrations. These are places where there's the perception where everybody is drinking. And if I'm not drinking, I'm missing out. Or I'm not participating the way I should be. And after you get sober, you still have to navigate that. That's not going away. Society will not change for you. You have to change how you interact with society. Welcome to the Sober Friends Podcast. My name is Matt J. With me is Steve. Oh, we're going to talk a little bit about that unexpected moment. Last night, Steve, was my daughter's 13th birthday, and she wanted to go to hibachi. We have a Sakura in town where you can go sit at the hibachi, and they do the whole thing. You know, right. Knocking around the spatula, throwing stuff up in the air, you know, tossing the zucchini at you. And the guy's very difficult to understand. And he turned her, Saki, excuse me, Saki? No, thank you. And it would have been very easy to take a squirt because you didn't quite know what was going on. And I didn't. He came around a second time, and I wasn't quite sure what he was asking me. Saki? Oh, yeah. No Saki. Yeah. Very, very easy to go down that path and unexpectedly take alcohol.
Yeah, good morning, Matt. We were talking a little bit before we signed on here that that happened to me before I came back from my relapse when I was out there. Same thing, big family gathering, lots of us, 8 or 10 of us around the table, and he started doing sake, right? Mm-hmm. And there almost wasn't. At that point, they almost weren't asking. He was just squirting, and I was a little naive at the time. I was not a big foodie. Like, I wasn't exactly sure what it was. I mean, I suspected, and I did. He did squirt it in me, and he may have come back a second time, and I think I passed. I don't remember. It was a while ago. But it did happen, and it caught me off guard, and it caught me off guard to the fact that everybody around the table was doing it, right? Like, nobody, right? And I was like, oh, I should do it too. And that is one of those things today I'm much more aware of, and I'd be much more conscious of doing it. If I don't know, I wouldn't do it, right? If there's any question today, I wouldn't do it. And just as a side note to that, if for some reason it happened, I wouldn't feel like I blew my sobriety, right? No. I know people do feel that way. Oh, alcohol touched my lips. I got to reset my date. I don't feel that way. I have a feeling that, if I have an intent to go out there and get a buzz and I take a drink with that intent, then yeah, I should probably reset my sobriety date. But if I pick up a wrong drink or something like that, which I'm sure we'll talk about, I don't feel like it's that critical for me. And again, and this is different for everybody, but for me, I feel like that's sort of how I judge it. Like, what is my intent in my brain?
Yes.
Know? And because that's really what made me an alcoholic. What made me an alcoholic was not me drinking alcohol, was my brain as I drink alcohol and my motives as I drink alcohol.
Right. There is a guy I know who tells this story every Christmas time. And he had a work party where there was food and all of that. And he went by and he grabbed a meatball. And that meatball was just soaked in alcohol. He had no idea. And I think he spent quite a while in an office calling his sponsor. Did I break my sobriety? And the answer to that was no, you made a mistake. If you went for a second meatball,
right,
then maybe. But it was not your intent. And this goes to not just the intent, but how do you stay on guard?
Right. Yeah, and it's important, especially if you're out there doing stuff, right? I mean, I'm out in the social world a lot less than I used to be. But if you are working sobriety and you're young and you're still, you're going to parties and stuff, and you're doing that kind of stuff, and you're going to weddings, right? Weddings are another point where you just got to be really careful. Then you have to have some thought into it. For most of us, we have to put some thought into how am I going to handle this, right? Today I don't need to put as much thought, but I would never go to a wedding without having some forethought about, okay, what are the parameters? What am I watching for? Because even after, 15 years, right, I still have to watch myself because I can still get caught up in, ooh, everybody's having a good time. That looks pretty good. I could still go down that road. And again, probably not to a drink, but enough that I shouldn't even be heading down that road. So I always have to have a plan. The first plan is to acknowledge that there's going to be a lot of alcohol or there's going to be a possibility of a problem. And then acknowledge that point so that I'm aware of it, right? And then you're less likely to get caught off guard.
Absolutely. It goes to a societal thing around drinking. I looked around at the hibachi and people at the table, and people were getting loaded. I don't go to a Japanese steakhouse very often, but the times I have gone, they appear to be drinking events. And just the other side of the table, everybody was drinking. So I get the whole, sake in the mouth thing. It is an expected experience where you're drinking. You mentioned weddings. Weddings are another place where it is expected to drink. This is the normalization of alcohol in a social setting, and specifically certain social settings. And I think a place like hibachi where you're celebrating and they're doing their thing, that alcohol is something that is expected. Public experiences, drinking games, celebrations, these are places where there's the perception where everybody is drinking. And if I'm not drinking, I'm missing out, or I'm not participating the way I should be. And after you get sober, you still have to navigate that. That's not going away. Society will not change for you. You have to change how you interact with society.
Yeah, and it all depends on, again, how you view your own alcoholism, right? I mean, and for me, that took me, right? It took me some time. And for me, it required help, okay? It required me to have people help me sort of understand my own addiction, my own alcoholism, my own disease. Because I had to figure out, like, why did I drink and what was what were the triggers and all that kind of stuff. And that didn't come right away. That took a long time for me. It took years for me in the program. Maybe for other people, maybe not so long. But for me, it took years. So I really had to figure that out. And I just remember all those events. I remember when I got married to my wife, right? At that point, it was before my relapse. We got married in 2003. But I remember, like, it was very well known, okay, we're doing, like, an apple cider, a cider for me for toasting. And, like, everybody knew that I wasn't drinking. And I even felt uncomfortable about that. Like, oh, look, everybody's got to make exceptions for me. And today it's a little bit different. Again, we talk about it on this podcast all the time. There's so much more awareness of alcohol-free stuff. I haven't been to a wedding in a while. But I'd be willing to bet that there's lots of non-alcohol options at weddings these days. Okay, where there almost were none before. Like if you wanted a Coke or something, right? If you wanted a mixer that went with alcohol, you could get that. But there weren't a lot of other. And I'd be willing to bet nowadays that if you go to a wedding, that there's probably a lot more options. So it all depends. It all depends on the individual. It all depends on yourself. But if you're new to sobriety, or if you're struggling, or if you have a history of relapse, right? Then these are things we always have to be careful of. And even though I don't have a history of relapse, I relapsed once, but I am very much aware of that possibility in my own life. I see it enough when I go to meetings. I see enough people coming back. I see enough old guys, mostly old guys. I was at my noon meeting on Wednesday, and there was an older woman there. And one of the guys said, "Oh yeah, she just showed up at my Friday meeting noon." And so I sent the ladies over of this meeting to talk to her. And she was old. She was in her 70s probably, right? And she's just coming in. Probably not for the first time. But my point is, it's out there, right? I mean, just because I have so many years, just because I'm 67 years old, it does not mean I'm immune to any of this. So I have to have a plan. I have to be on guard for the unguarded moment. It's the most important thing I do every day of my life today.
This has happened to the best of us. I told the story, my friend Ted, who ate the meatball. And that story that he tells every single Christmas is important to me because it did teach me something. You may have had an experience like this. So did I relapse if it was an accident? Does it matter if it's an accident? What if I swallowed before I realized what it was? So the answer to this is no, you didn't relapse, because this is really all about what your intent is. If you take a second one, that's a different story. And you run the risk there that the first one's an accident, but because you feel that in your system now, you feel as though I can't stop. So that is where the danger comes. Part of being in recovery is learning how to navigate these moments to prevent the accident. An accident can happen no matter if you put in all of the best intents. This is really about how do you stay on guard for the unguarded moments. You have to be in that all the time. And it's especially important no matter how much sobriety you have, one day or 25 years. If you're going to be in a social situation where you don't have control about what's served, you have to be thinking about,
right,
there could be alcohol there. And that's something I've learned. Every situation where I'm there, where food and drink is not under my control, I just am on alert. It's not like I'm making a conscious decision. I built that habit that I'm on alert, that alcohol could be around. I could get the wrong drink. Be careful. And when in doubt, I'll ask my wife to, this is another thing I've learned in a meeting. I asked my wife to try something first. Do you think there's alcohol in this? Could you try it first? There are a lot of people in recovery, lots of recovery, who do that, and then the wife grabs it and said, nope, don't eat that.
Interesting. You just brought up another memory for me, and I'm trying to think of when this was. It had to be before. I'm sure it was before I relapsed and came back, because I would never do this now. But my wife had some friends of her and her first husband's, and we had them over for dinner when we first moved into our house here, and then they reciprocated, and actually they invited another couple, which my wife is like, oh, that's how they get away with, like they do one dinner for two couples instead of doing it right. Like we just had them over anyway. So there was three couples, and we had a nice meal, and they live outside. He's a surgeon, like really nice house and all that kind of stuff. So he starts making crepes that he drenched in alcohol.
Oh,
right. Like he would take it and make it. And I sat there, and even my wife, Sue sat there, and I looked at her. And at this point, like, was this the point where I wasn't open about my alcoholism? I wasn't open about it. I wasn't comfortable. And I ate a crepe knowingly. Like, my point wasn't to get buzzed. My point was to try to be polite. And it put me at risk. Now, he asked if I wanted seconds, and I said no. And, my wife, when we talked about it afterwards, and she's like, you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. Like, I was very uncomfortable. But this is exactly what we're talking about, right? Like, I didn't have a plan when I went there about what I was going to do. It was easy for me to say, no, I don't want to drink and have a soda for something like that. And I'm not even sure if that, because I didn't make up these arrangements. This was one of my wife's friends, not mine. So I wasn't, whatever kind of communications went, like, hey, Steve doesn't drink. I wasn't part of that at all. So I don't know at what level. I don't remember. I didn't drink, so I'm sure I had either a soda or something. But I didn't have a plan. And I got caught in that unguarded moment. And all of a sudden, what happened? There was panic. I felt social pressure, right? And I made a decision. Today, I would never do that because my sobriety is much better and my program is much better, and I understand my alcoholism much better. But that was a time in my period where I wasn't drinking, but I also wasn't working a program. But this is what we're talking about. Like, what do you do? There's lots of different pressures, right? The whole thing, especially around Christmas time, that's a great one. And I remember other people, like, there's a whole bunch of chocolate balls, right? That chocolate that are filled with alcohol, rum, rum-soaked balls and stuff like that. And you just got to be careful. You got to know what it is. You got to, some people don't like to cook with alcohol. So even in this time of year with barbecues, right, you got to be careful. There may be an alcohol-based barbecue sauce that somebody's basting with. So if you object to those type of things, then you really need to be sure. You really need to ask. And if you're a little bit shy about your fact that you're an alcoholic and you don't want that out in the public, which is fine. I mean, there's no shame in that. Then you have to have a plan. You have to understand, no, I'll eat the hot dog instead of the barbecue. So, something like that. So we always need to have that plan because it's a danger to us. And I know for me, I just know, like, if I felt that buzz, man, I would want to do it more, right? I would hope that I could shut it down, but man, it would be like, ooh, I forgot how good this feels, And it's a really dangerous place for me to be.
Boundaries. Something in recovery that is worth learning are those boundaries. Something I have learned, there are things I'm not perfect at with my sobriety. I was perfect about going to meetings. Not always perfect about picking up the phone. Where I feel like I'm near perfect is I'm sure as hell going to set my boundaries, even if it's at the risk of feeling like I'm not being polite or even rude, because I would rather risk that than to relapse. Absolutely. And there are hosts, like my father-in-law is one of these people, who feels it's a polite thing to offer a drink, even if he knows someone's in recovery, because that's the polite thing to do. It is a crappy thing when somebody does that, but it really is on you. You still can say no. He's come over where I'm walking or I'm not paying attention, and I've heard here, and I turn and he's got a beer up to my lips, and I have recoil. Oh, nope, no, thank you. Right. It's not a great feeling, but it's still on me, even if it's at the risk of pissing somebody else off, because somebody might get over that. At worst, I might lose the relationship. But relapsing could negatively affect my health and could lead to an early death.
Yeah, not only that for me, and I always say that before I die of alcoholism, what I'll do is I'll just ruin everything around me.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's what I'll do. I'll ruin everything around me. I'll ruin all my relationships. I'll ruin, all that kind of stuff. So that's going to happen well before I ever die, unless I die in a car crash. But that's the problem, right? It's like I'm going to take people down with me. And that's the scary part for me. If I want to do my own demise, listen, that is just life. I get it. People do that. I honestly don't have judgment over people who do that. I had a friend who, I've talked about it here. She decided years ago that she was going to go home and drink herself to death. And I talked to her, and, I took her to meetings. She was an alcoholic. She knew what was going on. And I respected that. I didn't like it, but she made that decision. She was a almost 70-year-old woman. She didn't live a horrible life, but she didn't have a lot of money, but she was surviving okay. But obviously there was other stuff going on, but that's what she did. And over the next, 2.5 years, probably took her, that she just drink herself to death. And I always had a sort of respect for her doing that. She did it. There was some bad things about it. She dragged her son through it, right? Her son was trying to help her, ended up moving in with her, had to watch it all. But grown-ass adults get to do what they want.
Yes.
But anyway, I always have to, and that's what I mean. Like, I understand that today, and the reason why I have some clarity on this subject is because I work a program, right? And I mean that. I work a program, and I surround myself by other alcoholics so that I could hear about pitfalls and don't have to experience them, right? Just like you talk about Ted's story about the meatball, right? The fact that you go to that meeting and you hear Ted talk about that every Christmas or whenever it is that you've heard it enough times, you don't have to experience it to understand it anymore, right? So that's the beauty of having a program. And again, we talk about lots of different ways to get sober, but the beauty of having a program, the beauty of having a fellowship is that we don't have to experience all the pitfalls, that we can learn from other people's experiences. And I try to do that. And that's why I share. I go to meetings and I share. And because, like, listen, I still say I shared Friday night, and I'm like, listen, I'm still an asshole, right? Like, I still react poorly to things, and I share that stuff. And I share that stuff at meetings. I talk about, because I tell people, this is why I keep coming. Like, this is why I keep coming to the program. Not so much that I want to drink, but I just have a brain that just keeps me acting like an asshole at times.
Really, that's the underlying thing that made us alcoholics. There's something going on in the brain that we needed alcohol as a crutch to get through that. If you're an asshole, it's sort of, there's an old Bill Cosby routine on Bill Cosby himself that said, I use drugs, I use cocaine because it enhances my personality. And Bill's response is, yeah, but what if you're an asshole? Right. And that's the thing. A lot of us might be assholes underneath. And then, we amplify it to 11 when we're in addiction. Yeah. And it almost gets more amplified when we're not drinking. Yeah. Because we're in between, and that becomes acute.
Absolutely. I always say some of the worst decisions I have ever made in my life is when I wasn't drinking, but also I wasn't working a program. Like, that was the scariest part of my life, because I had all of these problems in my head, in my brain, that I didn't understand, that I didn't know why. I've said it here before. I stopped drinking, and my life didn't get better because after about 3 years, I stopped doing any work. And I couldn't figure out, about 5 years into the program, first time through, I couldn't figure out why my life was still shitty, even though I had stopped drinking. And I would literally ask myself that question: why does my life suck so much when I'm not drinking anymore? And that was because I had lots of stuff to address that I wasn't addressing. And I made horrible decisions, right? I always talk about it. That's when I decided to divorce my first wife. No reason on her end. She was a great woman. She still is a great woman. She's still alive. No one want to talk about her in past tense. She still is. And I was unhappy. I was miserable. And truthfully, I did it because I didn't want her. And I mean this honestly. And I'm not trying to make, I did something good. It wasn't good at all. But I did it because I didn't want to drag her through it with me. I mean it. I was like, she doesn't deserve to go through this. So I thought it was the best thing. And it was horrible, and there's lots of bad stuff. And sometimes my kids will listen to this podcast, and they know all this stuff. But yeah, it was, and that was, I was 6 years into my sobriety, not drinking, and horrible decisions. So for me, it's program, fellowship, talk to other alcoholics, do stuff, do meetings. Again, that's what works for me, and and that helps me be on guard for that unguarded moment.
Program for me is the framework.
Yeah,
it's the framework. It's almost like a flow or process chart of if yes, then that. Yeah. I use that, and then I think through what are the other things I need to improve about myself. And that has led to different types of therapy. Could be self-help books, could be reading websites, but I am constantly thinking through what are the things I need to do to navigate this world in a better way. And if I'm always in that mindset, my character defects will be minimized. There are those times that the character defects flare up. And one of those things is if I don't feel like I'm appreciated. Taken for granted.
Man.
And a lot of that I'm learning is from childhood, that I was not, I don't know if it was taken for granted, but I'm trying to put my finger on the words. I was not considered.
Right.
And so, and legitimately not considered when I was younger. And because of that, I've carried it forward. I can articulate that now. If I feel like I'm not being considered, that is a big button push for me. So I have to be careful when I'm in that place. Am I feeling this way? Do I need to just talk to somebody about it? You know, if it's my wife, maybe I need to pull her aside and like, I'm in a place where I don't feel like I'm being considered.
Yeah.
And sometimes if I talk it through, I can realize whether I'm being a baby or not. But it's worth having that communication. And that is the type of mindset that I'm in now, that you talk through this stuff and you kind of learn how to talk to other people about what's going on with you. If you're listening and you don't have a problem, this may sound totally warped and outside of common sense. And it is.
Right.
Because those of us who have had a problem used alcohol to not have to build those skills. Now we have to do it much later in life because we don't have alcohol now. So we have to fix those things. So it's almost like I'm going to do some remedial stuff to teach myself how to walk, to physical therapy and how to talk. That's what it is, what recovery is, and that kind of guides those next actions of what I should do. Being aware of your emotions, how I'm going to react to it, as opposed to thoughtlessly reacting. Because do that enough times, it leads to a drink.
Yeah, no, you hit on so many good points there. First of all, I had a tough day yesterday, with that exact thing, feeling unappreciated.
Mm-hmm.
Doing a lot of work here, trying to help out. Got a lot of responsibilities here at home, and when I feel somewhat, most of the times it doesn't bother me, but yesterday it just got to me where I felt like, it just felt like I was working hard and not getting any appreciation from it. And actually being accused of not doing certain things. Anyway, it was tough, and I didn't handle it well. Some of that's just me being tired, right? Some of that is just a long, drawn out. Like this is, me taking care of my wife has been going on since February. That's 6 months it's been going on. And it just, it was a day where I just emotionally, it was just a tough day for me. But so that is a trigger, right? And as you said, if this sounds abnormal to you, you're absolutely right, because it is, right? Mm-hmm. One thing I realized today, and I openly admit it, is that I'm not a normal person. Like I don't have a normal brain. My brain doesn't work like and again, I don't even know what that is, right? We all have different stuff, but my brain works in a way that there are certain triggers, there are certain things that still to this day, at 67 years old, still make me look for some type of comfort to make me feel better. And for a good part of my life, that was alcohol. And now that's not there. So I always have to try to figure out, like, what's going on. I do a pretty good job of managing that today. But still, there are days where it's just difficult. There are days where we're just worn out. And those are the scary days for us and for me. Like yesterday was yesterday was a day where I was emotional and I was upset and felt unwanted and felt uncared for and felt all of those things. In the past, like that was a drinking day for me. Mm-hmm. Like that was a day that I was going to hit it hard so I'd make myself not feel those problems. I don't need to do that today. And that was never a thought yesterday, right? It was never a thought. But I do realize, today I understand. Like, that's one of my triggers. I got to be careful. I got to understand that. And I thought about going out to our buddy Tim's TP meeting. I decided against it because it's just a long drive for me.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, I may end up hitting a meeting today, which I don't usually hit on Sundays, right? And I may decide, something, today's a good day to pick up that extra meeting. And that's what works for me.
I can think through your situation because I deal with this with my kids sometimes when they're cranky back with me. And it's not that they don't love me anymore. It's they're cranky. And recovery's taught me this. I'm thinking about, why is your wife wagging the finger at you? And the first thing I'm thinking of is, you were mentioning you were tired. I bet she's tired.
Yeah.
She's in pain.
Yeah.
You're the only person who's generally around. So if she's in a place of frustration, it's going to be directed at you, whether it's legitimate or not. Deep down, no, I'm sure she is very, very grateful.
Yeah.
But you're the only one around. She's impatient. I'm sure she can't articulate this. In her head, I'm frustrated. I can't go do this, because she sounds independent. I can't go do this. I can't get up. I'm in pain. I'm always tired. This has been going on the entire year. Steve, you're not doing enough.
Right. No,
that's how it comes out. It's not personal.
No, it isn't. I get it. It's not personal. And actually, it's funny you say that, because I even challenged her on that. And I said, why are you taking it out on me? And she looked at me and she said, who else am I going to take it out on?
That sounds like Sue.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Who else am I going to take it out on? And I even said, well, take it out on yourself. I was upset. Take it out on yourself, not me. But you're absolutely right. Like, she's frustrated, right? Like, she hasn't even been able to get up and get to the commode by herself.
Yeah.
That's changing. That's changing. Like, now we're getting to a point where she's going to be able to do that shortly, where we'll probably both be comfortable enough that she's going to be able to do a lot more on her own. And over the next few weeks, like, everything will change over the next few weeks. So we get that. We're both tired. So. And I talked to her this morning about it. I'm like, hey, listen, this is what's going on. Try to clear the air. Boom, let's get off to a better start. And it's fine. It's fine. But again, I talk about this not to air my dirty laundry. I talk about this because these are the triggers that I used to drink over. These are the things. These are the stresses. These are the frustrations. These are all of those things that in the past I would drink over. And what would happen is, like, I was able to somewhat control my drinking. And here's what I'll tell you about. Like, if I had a day like yesterday, I had responsibilities to take care of my wife, I would not have been drinking during the day. Probably, maybe I would have started a little bit later. But as soon as my chores were done and she was in bed for the night, boom, I would have pounded them. And I would have gotten, and those are the triggers. That's how I drank. So when I get in those situations, I guess what I'm, as I'm working through it in my own head, when I get in those situations, I remember, oh yeah, this is why I drank. This is the trigger that sent me down that road, and I don't want to do that anymore. So I have to figure something else out. And I knew we had this podcast this morning, right? This is, I set my alarm because last week I forgot about it for a while. and it's like, I knew I had that to do today. So that's part of my program too, is coming on here every Sunday with you. Yeah. And talking about this and working through some of our own struggles. So again, that you listening to this podcast, maybe you don't have to go through it.
Yeah, it's two-part for me. That this helps clear the air for me. I feel better. Having to do this once a week is a check-in. But I am willing to put a lot out there because it might reach you because you're going through something similar. That's important for me to do. It's a different way of connecting with people. And that's just the way we roll. That's how you kind of learn. All right, now it's time to hear from you. I'd love to hear your experience with maybe the unexpected bit of alcohol. You can always reach out, Matt at soberfriendspod.com, or on all the social media platforms at soberfriendspod. No Twitter. Twitter's bad. Every once in a while, I'll go back on there, and I'm just like, there are things that are like, they're obviously just evil. And I see people, yeah, this is exactly I agree. I'm like, oh my God, I got to get back off of this platform. This is awful. But with that said, Steve, thanks for sharing. Thanks for being vulnerable today.
Hey, thank you, Matt.
And we'll see everybody next week. Bye, everybody.